Well, I know it's time to teach because my nose running. You know, ain't that something? I notice people, politicians or anybody, they can get up and get ready to speak, and they'll have to blow their nose just about every time. Preachers do it. Everybody does. Yeah, or start coughing. That's why. Yeah. You're getting so you just kind of expect it, you know. It's just, yeah. I want to go back in the Old Testament and bring out some familiar scriptures. And, a couple of years ago, I may have taught a little bit on this. I don't remember. I've been here over 2 years now, and I don't remember ever teaching the same thing twice, but some of the things in here I have taught before somewhere. I don't remember where. But anyway, I'm in Jeremiah 18, and you probably know what that's about. It's about the potter and the potter's wheel. And I want to bring out some things here that maybe you never thought about. I mean, we know the symbolism behind it, but there's a little bit more, I think, that we can get out of this. There's always a little bit more you can get out of a scripture, you know. You can dig a little bit deeper and find all amazing things in this book. But I want to read from Jeremiah 18, and I think I want to read down through 6, verse 6. And this is what we're going to get into this morning. The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. Now, I noticed that word wheels, and it's plural, wheels. And I got to thinking about that, and this is not really in the lesson, but I got to thinking about that. These old potter's wheels, a lot different than they are today. Today they got electric motor and all that. But back then there was a great big wheel on the bottom made out of rock. Heavy, real heavy. Then a shaft that goes up and a little wheel on top. And when you turned that big wheel, it was so heavy that once it started turning, it would keep turning. So they'd sit on a stool there and they would push it with their foot to keep it going. And the weight of it would keep it going. And when Jeremiah saw this, he saw two wheels. You know, he saw the big wheel on the bottom and the little wheel. That explains why the word is plural. I understood that. You know, this book is an amazing book. You find little words in there and you wonder, well, what does that mean? It don't make any sense. And this is one of them, you know, like he went and he saw these wheels. Well, he didn't. He just saw one potter and one potter's wheel. But anyway, verse 4, and the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again. Now the word marred means it means defective, it means decay, it means there's a flaw in the clay is what he's saying. So he made another vessel. It seemed good to the potter to make it. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, this is Jeremiah talking, O house of Israel, cannot I do with you as this potter? Saith the Lord, behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are ye in my hand, O house of Israel. And there's a lot more to it. You know, and he tells about repenting and renewing them and judgment and on down through the chapter, but we're not going to go that far. First of all, I want to find out what part everybody plays in this little story. The potter, of course, is God. And in Isaiah 64, I think, I found where that it says that God is a potter, and he forms us on the wheel. So that tells me that he's not only talking about a nation, but he's talking about people. I am a piece of clay, and as you. And he's got his hands on us every day, and he's forming us into something that pleases him. And that's the way the symbolism lines up. The clay, of course, is people or nations. I want to read one thing from the New Testament in Romans 9, yeah. And look at verse 20. Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest unto God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, Why hast thou made me thus? Verse 21, hath not the potter power over the clay? Now, to make a vessel, a different kind of vessel from each person. So he tells us there and confirms it that he's talking about people. And he says that we are the thing formed. You are the thing formed. Now, when he says the thing formed can't jump up in God's face and say, I don't like the way I am. You're not allowed to do that because he has chosen to make you the way he wants you. And in reality, your life won't be worth anything unless you fit into his will. You can't do things your way. You don't say, God, I don't like the way I live or the way I look. And you can't bring that before God because he knows you better than you know yourself. Okay, now the potter's wheel, I believe that is symbolic of life, movement. And you go through life and God is, his hands is on you and he's forming you and shaping you into the image of Christ. That's what's going on. Now, the molding of the clay is him transforming us into the image of Christ. Now, there is in verse 3, back in Jeremiah, the 18th chapter, I want you to look at verse 3. I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. But look at verse 2. Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. Here's the key. If he says to go to the Pentecostal Assembly Church, and he will cause you to hear his word, you can't just go pick out another church and go to it. If he says go down to the Walmart parking lot, you can't go to the hairdresser and get the same word. The thing about it, you have to be a place called there. And he told Jeremiah exactly where to go. Go down there to that potter's house, and it's there I'll cause you to hear my word. He didn't say I'll cause you to hear my word anywhere else but there. And we have to remember that every day of our life. We have to be in the position God wants us to be in if we want to really hear what he's got to say. We can't play games with him and say, well, I'm going to do my own thing. He'll let us go. He'll say, you go ahead and you wander around, different churches, and you go out to the mall, you go shopping, whatever you want to do, but don't you expect me to come and play along with your tune. I don't dance to your music. He says, you come and you meet me where I say meet me, and I will cause you to hear my word. So that's what he told Jeremiah. He said, I got something to say to you, but I'm going to say it in symbolism. I want you to look at this potter because I'm going to say something to you through what this man's doing here. And, we've done that for a couple of years now, use symbolism. You can take all of these stories, almost every one in the Old Testament, and use symbolism and bring out the true meaning that will fit your life today. And this is no exception. This little story here of the potter's house will fit your life today once you dig down and find out what he's saying. All right, now, he will not hear us any place but there. Because he said, Jeremiah, it is there that I'll cause you to hear my voice. You'll hear my words there. Okay. Another thing, verse 4. Look at verse 4. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in his hand, in the hand of the potter. And he made it again as it seemed good to the potter to make it. Now, who's the potter? God is the potter. What he makes in your life is what seems good to him. And that's what it's going to be. And at the end of that, when it's all over, if you could look back over your life and the places that you seem like your flesh is so uncomfortable, but somehow down deep inside you knew that you're in the will of God, you're going to look back and thank God every day because he pushed you into that mold and he made you what he wanted you to be. Because his will for your life is perfect and is far above anything that you can come up with yourself. He knows you and he knows what will make you happy. He knows what will make you profitable, what will give you value in life, and what will minister to all those around you. He knows what to do with your life. He says, Gladys, I'm going to make you a preacher. Now, she ain't going to be no insurance salesman. She ain't going to sell makeup. She ain't going to do nothing. She is going to preach. And it's there that he will cause her to hear his words, just like he told Jeremiah. And he's telling all of us the same thing. You get in the middle of my will, you won't have any trouble hearing what I've got to say. The problem is being there. Okay, now, the hardest thing that you'll ever do is submit to the hand of God and let God mold you into what seems good to him. Because his thoughts, Isaiah says, are above your thoughts. His ways are above our ways. He don't think like we do. So what seems good to him may not be comfortable for you. But there's a little scripture I remembered from over in Ephesians 5. In Ephesians 5, verse, I wrote it down here. Yeah, verse 29. He says, no man ever yet hated his own flesh. I mean, you don't hate your flesh enough to push it aside and do what God wants you to do. You're going to have to choose between the two, because your natural man don't hate his flesh. I always think about this little teenage girl. She stood before the mirror, and she wasn't a very pretty girl, and she was complaining, and finally just broke down and cried and looked in the mirror and said, I hate myself. I hate myself. And it just dawned on me, no, if you hated yourself, you'd be glad you was ugly. Ain't that right? Think about it. If you were miserable and you hated yourself, you wouldn't complain at all. Because you'd feel like, well, I'm fitting right in where I'm supposed to be. I hate myself. I ain't worth nothing, so I'm not going to be worth nothing. And sometimes we get caught in that trap. Anyway, in Ephesians says that no man ever yet hated his own flesh. So you're going to have this battle. The flesh is going to say, I want to do this. I want to go here to this university and get this degree, and I want to go in this business world, and I want to make all this money and buy this and buy that. I'm going to do this, on and on and on. You can lay your plans out and nothing sinful about it and miss the will of God for your life. Now, can't you do it? You can. I remember when I was young, I used to invent things. You know, I got one of those German minds where I like to work in the workshop, and I like to. But I invented this thing called an angular adjustable cymbal mounting. Got me a lawyer, patent attorney there in Johnson City. Filed a patent. He called me. He said, this is an amazing thing. He said, I have no rejections on this patent. So it went right through. And so I got me a patent on this angular adjustable cymbal mounting. And I thought, well, I'm going to lease this thing to some drum companies. And I wrote to Pearl Drums and Ludwig Drums and Rogers Drums, different manufacturers, and I showed them this idea. And couldn't get anything going. One company, I think Pearl, one of them, contacted me and said, if you get the manufacturing going, pay for all of the tooling up, they call it, and make so many, then we will enter our catalog. Well, I couldn't afford to do that. I needed somebody to take hold of this thing and go with it. Well, it didn't work out. And I thank God every day it didn't work out, because you know what my plans were. And once I made a little bit of money on this patent, I was going to get a building and start a nightclub. See, this is before I become a Christian. That's where my mind was. And I had friends in the music business. I had a band. I could line up any band, get it all going. But I had all them plans. The first dollar that came in from any drum company, the first dollar, I was going to start investing it in that nightclub. Now, if those plans for my life had come true, where do you think I'd be today? I wouldn't be here, would I? I would not even be a Christian, more than likely. I would have got caught up in that nightclub scene, maybe made a lot of money. But I'd have got caught up in it, and my life would have no spiritual value whatsoever. I'd have spent the rest of my life entertaining a bunch of drunks that didn't know who I was even. And the band could play all night long, and they wouldn't recognize one song. I mean, I've been in that atmosphere. I've been in it where there was so many drunks out there, you didn't know if anybody was anybody else's wife or not. You didn't know. I remember one time in a nightclub, looked back, I was playing drums, I think. Looked back over the stage, and there's some man back there had somebody down on the floor, beating them with his fist. Drunks will do anything. And got to looking real close, and it was a woman. Had his girlfriend down on the floor beating her right there in that nightclub. And I thought, man, what kind of atmosphere am I into here? I remember we used to play for the New Year's Eve parties, and they'd start out, they had their big suits on, tuxedos, and the women that had their flowing night clothes on, gowns, beautiful dresses, and they'd be sitting so proper and drinking their little drink. About halfway through the night, when that bunch got drunk, there was no different than the one back there who was beating on his girlfriend. Everybody was the same. Once you get drunk, everybody's the same. The nice tuxedo didn't mean a thing, didn't change one thing. But I was in that scene for years, until God started to deal with me. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like that conviction that he was bringing to me. I didn't like it. I'd go drive around a tent meeting, never go in, just drive around, pulling it, feeling the Spirit of God pulling me, and I'd back off and fight it. I didn't like it. My flesh didn't like it. No man ever yet hated his own flesh. I didn't hate my own flesh. If I'd have hated my flesh, I'd have been in there at a tent. Anyway. Romans 9:20 and 21. We've already dealt with that. Do we have the right? Can the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Why have you done this to me? We was talking in here this morning. One of the ladies was talking about this guy that was crippled. I think maybe Audrey was talking about it. No. Yeah, she was talking about this guy that was born with a disease and is all crippled up. I've seen him on TV. Preaches to thousands and thousands of people. No man ever yet loved that condition. Always hated that condition. I'm sure if you got him down and talked to him straight off, he would tell you he hated the way he was. But if it wasn't for the way he was, he wouldn't be the way he is now. And that's all of us. That's all of our lives. Anyway, does the thing formed have a right to question? Well, we're not really talking about rights. We're just talking about human nature. And we will question, regardless. There's preachers I know all over the world that probably pray, and they got a handful of people, and they've been working on a mission field for 40 years or something. It's got a handful of people, and they probably pray and said, oh God, I've missed you. No, they didn't miss him. No. They're probably right in the middle of God's will for their life, but they don't realize it because they're looking at things through fleshly eyes. They're not seeing what is being accomplished in the spiritual world. And now, Gladys, you're the same way, honey. I know it. You wish this place was packed full. But in reality, if you're in God's will, the people that are here, this is a great crowd of people. They love each other. They support you. They're on your side all the time. I mean, we got good people here. We don't, I've never seen a bad crowd in a church. I've seen a small crowd, but I've never seen a bad one. We've been down through the years, churches, thousands and thousands of people, and then in a little basement church somewhere with half a dozen people, and it's all the same. If you're in God's will, the flesh ain't going to like it, and you're always going to long for something that you think is better, but it can't get no better than God's will. It can't be. Your will never be better for you than God's will. Okay. Now, he says that the potter has the right, in Romans, once again, 9:20 and 21. He has the right to make vessels of honor or vessels of dishonor. He can do what he wants to do. But now we got them words kind of mixed up sometimes. A vessel of honor, the word honor only means that you're up and exalted before people. Now I stand here teaching a little class. I'm in a little bit of a place of honor. And thank God. But there's vessels that we don't honor that deserve more honor. Now look in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and you'll see the body of Christ says there's parts of that body that you can't see. But they are more valuable than the ones you can see. Now look at it practically. Take your heart and put it on the outside and see how long you live. No, it's got to be in its place. Well, you can't see it. It's not honored. No, it's in its place. And the body would die without it. Same thing with the church. If we didn't have people like Donnie and Leroy and Sandy and all of those that come and do the little things, we couldn't have a church if somebody didn't take care of these little things. Gladys can't do it all. Bless her heart, she probably would try. Yes, she probably has. We met preachers all over the country, and they'd say, their wife would teach Sunday school class, and they'd mow the yard and fix the roof, and they would preach, and then they'd go visit the sick, and they'd get together and go to the hospital. I mean, it's constantly only them, and it just wear them down. But they was right in the middle of God's will and loved every bit of it. If you're in God's will and you're running a vacuum cleaner in this church, you ain't going to be in no more valuable place than you are. Think about it. I remember a story years ago I told in this church. There was this big evangelist, and he had an airplane, and he sent out his people ahead of time into Africa to set up this series of meetings. And he had thousands and thousands spent on advertising. And all the little villages, in that area, they had all committed to come to these meetings. And everything was just going good. And the day come, and he was getting ready to take off and go over to Africa. And he looked, and there was a flat tire on the plane. The plane had a flat tire. And it's not like a car. It takes a whole different set of tools and things to change a tire on a plane, but you can't take off without a tire to roll, And pretty soon there was a storm rolling in, and if he didn't take off within a couple of hours, he's going to miss it, and all the meetings would be canceled, all that money down the drain, all the people that even walked to the meetings, everything would be canceled. And he talked to the main man at the airport and said, I've got to have somebody to fix this tire. And the man told him, look, this is quite a job, and you got to jack that aircraft up and take that off, and you've got to do this, and told him all how to do it. And he said, we got one man that'll do it. He's an aircraft mechanic. He had no problem doing it, but he's not here today. He had to have a day off. He's worked every day for 2 months. He's had to have a day off. He's at home with his family. The preacher said, please get him. Please get him. The man called him. And the man's at home with his family, enjoying his time off. And he calls him and tells him the situation. He said, I just can't do it. And he said, well, please, please. He said, you don't understand what's riding on this. Finally, he submitted to go, and he went and went out there, and jacked up the plane under the wing, and a certain kind of jack you had to use, and all of that stuff. He knew all of that. And he got it all fixed, and the plane took off before the storm come. Now, here's the question. At that point in time, who do you think was the most valuable to the kingdom? The man that fixed the tire. Now, that's the way the church operates. Sometimes the person that runs that sound system is more valuable than the one up here speaking. Sometimes the one that cleans that church is more valuable than the rest of us. Sometimes the little things, singing and praying, or things like that you do involved in this work of God is more valuable than those that stand up here in the spotlight. You're more valuable than I am, and spiritually. I realize that. But anyway, something happens. He said that the clay was marred in his hand. Let's go back and let me make sure I'm getting it right. He said that the clay was marred in the potter's hand. Verse 4. Chapter 18, verse 4. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again. Now, it don't say that he threw that clay away. He didn't throw that clay away. He said he made it again. So that tells me a whole lot right there. They may be some flaws in our life. He's not going to throw you away. The only thing that caused him to throw you away is you've become stiff-necked and stubborn and not pliable in his hand. If you refuse to let him mold you, he'll set you aside. But as long as you're willing for God to mold you, you may have a flaw in your life. But it says he made it again. He'll make us again. He'll fix the flaw. He'll keep on molding you and working on you until he fixes the things that's wrong. And it has to be that way. The clay has to remain pliable. Now, how does he do that? If you've ever seen, I seen this special on TV one time, these people making pottery. And I watched them, and every now and then they'd go and they'd dip their hands down in water and spray it on the clay and get it soft. Now you can see the symbolism, can't you? It says that in Ephesians chapter 5, it says that he washes the church with the water of his word. So when we start getting stiff-necked and stubborn and won't yield to the potter, we need a little water of the word, don't we? We got to be more pliable, and the only way to do that is the water of the word. Now you come into this church and you're going to hear, we're going to sing the word, we're going to preach the word, we're going to talk about the word at the table in here, we're going to pray for each other, we're going to be involved in the word constantly until that word washes us, makes us more pliable, and when we go out into the world and it tries to get us stiff-necked and stubborn again, we come back and we gather. And we get more water, don't we? It's like the Lord takes his hand and dips in water splashes on us, and he works and he works and he works until he gets us pliable again. Now, here's the problem. There's a fire coming. Every time the potter would make a vase or a pot or anything, after he got it the way he wanted it, he stuck it in the fire. And I guarantee you that you will be in the fire. That's the reason that he has to work out all of these impurities out of your life, because if you don't, when your fire comes, you're going to crack. You're not going to make it. You've got to be pliable in his hands. You've got to move when he says move. You've got to go where he says go. You've got to listen to him and be sensitive to his voice. You've got to obey him. Because if you ignore the flaw that's in your life and you don't let him deal with it, you're going in the fire sooner or later. And if the flaw is still in there, like the pottery, it'll crack. Won't be able to use it. That's why he works on us constantly. Because he knows in everybody's life there's a fire coming. And in this nation, I don't know what kind of fire is coming, but I feel like it's coming. And I feel like we need all the water that we can get. And we need to stay pliable in his hand. We need to let him work on us to the point where we don't have no flaws. When the fire comes, it won't do nothing but harden us and make us fit for use. Now, if we don't allow him to work out the flaws in our life, the weaknesses, when we're placed in the fire, we will become a vessel that can't be used. So I'm going to leave that with you. We got our own little special preacher lady here. She's the head of this congregation and doing a great job. Now she's going to come up here and sprinkle a little bit of water on you. God bless you. Thank you.